UN warns two-state solution nearing point of no return. And also BRICS members blast rise of trade protectionism. Hello, good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brendan Lepore. Cambodia and Singapore support Malaysia's efforts as the ASEAN chairman to continue dialogue with all stakeholders to ensure the safety of humanitarian workers and bring peace to the people of Myanmar. Prime Minister Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim said his Cambodian counterpart Hun Manet and Singaporean counterpart Lawrence Wong said this when contacted separately via phone, which among other things also discussed matters of regional interest. Dato Sri Anwar said the two Prime Ministers voiced their support and welcomed the initiative when informed of the meeting with Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, Chairman of Myanmar's National Administrative Council, and Man Win Kaing Tan of Myanmar's National Unity Government in Bangkok recently. He noted that the meeting is seen as an important step towards lasting peace efforts in Myanmar. Dato Sri Anwar said they also discussed regional trade developments, especially related to counter tariffs imposed by the US, and informed that Malaysia had sent a representative through Investment, Trade and Industry Minister Tengku Dato Sri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz to find a solution that would benefit both countries. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called on world leaders to show political courage for a two-state solution in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, while warning such an outcome remains increasingly slim. Referring to the issue as a central question for peace, Guterres told the United Nations Security Council that a two-state solution was nearing a point of no return. After more than 18 months of war, he said the humanitarian situation throughout the Gaza Strip has gone from bad to worse, to beyond imagination.
Third, settler violence continues at alarmingly high levels in a climate of impunity, with the entire Palestinian communities facing repeated assaults and destruction, sometimes abetted by Israeli soldiers.
However, Guterres said the world cannot afford to watch the two-state solution disappear, calling on member nations to take irreversible action to implement such a peace. He highlighted that in this period of turmoil and transition for the region, member states must spell out how they will realize the commitment and promise of a two-state solution. Nearly 150 countries recognize the Palestinian state, but the two-state solution remains rejected by Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu. On a related note, Amnesty International has accused Israel of committing a live-stream genocide against Palestinians by forcibly displacing Gazans and creating a humanitarian catastrophe in the besieged territory. Rights group Amnesty, in its annual report, said Israel was acting with specific intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza, thus committing genocide. It said since 7 October 2023, the world has been made audience to a live-stream genocide. It noted that states watched on as if powerless as Israel killed thousands upon thousands of Palestinians, wiping out entire multi-generational families, destroying homes, livelihoods, hospitals and schools. Amnesty also said it had documented multiple war crimes by Israel, including attacks on civilians, adding that Israel had deliberately engineered an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe. The London-based rights group said 1.9 million people, about 90% of Gaza's population, had been forcibly displaced during the war. The United Nations had cited similar figures. Israel's military offensive has killed at least 52,365 people in Gaza. Faced with a drastic drop in funding, the United Nations has decided to scale back its humanitarian aid efforts in Ukraine. The decision comes as UN agencies have been announcing reductions in their operations and staffing levels around the world, following major drops in donor contributions, particularly from the United States. In January, the United Nations appealed for $2.63 billion in funding to assist 6 million people who need aid in Ukraine. However, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said, due to a sharp contraction in humanitarian funding, the UN and its partners have further reprioritized its operations in Ukraine to reach 4.8 million people with $1.75 billion. It explained that the objective is to reach those most at risk and most in need, centering on 4 core response priorities, namely people near the front line, evacuations, emergency response after strikes, and aid to the most vulnerable among the internally displaced people. The agency also noted that without increased support, even the necessary life-saving efforts could be jeopardized. Overall, 12.7 million people are estimated to be in need of aid in Ukraine. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has warned that the United States would end mediation unless Russia and Ukraine put forward concrete proposals, as U.S. patience wanes on early priority for President Donald Trump. The U.S. president had vowed to end the war in his first 24 hours back in the White House. But as Trump celebrated 100 days in office, Rubio suggested the administration could soon turn attention to other issues. The White House stressed that it is time for concrete proposals to be delivered by the two parties on how to end the conflict. It added that if there is no progress, the U.S. will step back as mediators in the process. However, the White House noted that it would ultimately be up to Trump to decide whether to move ahead on diplomacy. Russian President Vladimir Putin recently proposed a 3-day ceasefire around Moscow's commemorations next week for the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. But Putin has rebuffed a Ukrainian-backed U.S. call for a 30-day ceasefire. The United States said it wants a complete, durable ceasefire and an end to the conflict instead of a 3-day moment to celebrate an occasion. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given the military operational freedom to respond to a deadly attack in Kashmir. The New Delhi has blamed on arch-rival Pakistan. A week after the deadliest attack on civilians in the contested region in years, Modi held a closed-door meeting with army and security chiefs during which he granted complete operational freedom to decide on the mode, targets and timing of the response of the terror attack. The development comes as nations around the world, from neighboring China to the United States, express deep concerns over the nuclear-armed neighbors' mounting tensions and urge restraint. India's army said it had repeatedly traded gunfire with Pakistani troops across the line of control, the de facto Kashmir border, a heavily fortified zone of high-altitude Himalayan outposts. Pakistan's military did not confirm the shooting, but state radio in Islamabad reported it had shot down an Indian drone, calling it a violation of its airspace. Relations have plummeted after India accused Pakistan of backing an attack in Indian-administered Kashmir on 22nd April, in which 26 men were killed. Islamabad has rejected the charge, and both countries have since exchanged gunfire in Kashmir and diplomatic barbs, as well as expelled citizens and ordered the mainland border crossing shut. Elsewhere, North Korean leader Kim Jongun has ordered steps to be taken to accelerate the arming of Navy vessels with nuclear weapons. According to state-run Korean Central News Agency, Kim issued the directive after he oversaw the first day of a 2-day weapons test of North Korea's latest destroyer, the Cho-hyun. Saying that the time has come to make a responsible option for accelerating the nuclear armament of the Navy in order to defend the state and maritime sovereignty from the existing and future threats. Kim set forth different tasks for realizing the goal. The state media had previously reported of the launching of the Cho-hyun, showing photos of Kim attending a ceremony with his daughter, Ju-ae, considered by many experts as his likely successor. It said the warship, named after a deceased North Korean anti-Japanese fighter, is a 5,000-ton destroyer-class vessel that took more than a year to build. Given its size, experts believe the vessel can carry both ship-to-surface and ship-to-air missiles. Pyongyang has claimed in previous years to be developing underwater nuclear attack drones, which could unleash a radioactive tsunami. But analysts have questioned whether it actually has such a weapon. In Sweden, 3 people were killed in a shooting in the Swedish city of Uppsala on Tuesday, and a murder investigation has been launched. Police said it was investigating the shooting as a homicide and that it had no information about the incident being a terror or hate crime at this point. Police said they received information that a person left the scene on an electric scooter. Whether this person is a perpetrator or a witness or someone who has some connection to the incident, the police said it is unclear at this time. Police said the victims were yet to be identified and declined to speculate on the motive for the killings. Electric scooters have been used several times as a mode of escape after gang conflict shootings in Sweden. Uppsala has seen many gang-related shootings in the past decade, but usually outside the city centre. Swedish Justice Minister Gunnar Strömmer said the Justice Ministry was in close contact with the police and it was closely monitoring developments in the case. Police said earlier they had received calls from members of the public who heard gunshots in the city centre and that emergency services had rushed to the scene. Witnesses said they heard 5 shots and had seen people in the area running to take cover. Several Swedish media reported that the shooting took place near or in a hair salon. And still to come, Trump eases car tariffs after firms raised concerns. Stay with us. China, Brazil and other members of the BRICS grouping have slammed the resurgence of trade protectionism at a meeting in Rio de Janeiro, dominated by US President Donald Trump's tariffs blitz. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov were among the top diplomats of the 11-country grouping attending 2 days of talks on issues ranging from Trump's trade war to the push for peace in Ukraine. Mauro Vieira, the Foreign Minister of Brazil, which holds the rotating BRICS presidency, said the bloc underscored its firm rejection of protectionism without explicitly referring to Trump.
Do documento aprovado, eu gostaria de destacar o firme rechaço de todos à ressurgência do protecionismo comercial.
The BRICS meeting in Rio came at a critical moment for the world economy after the International Monetary Fund slashed growth forecasts over the impact of Trump's sweeping levies on imports. The ministers, however, did not issue a joint statement. Brazil instead settled for a declaration summarizing the discussions. It said there was absolute consensus on the subject of trade conflicts and tariffs. Brazil noted that the group's foreign ministers expressed serious concern at the prospect of a fragmented global economy and the weakening of multilateralism. US President Donald Trump has moved to soften tariffs on automakers, sparking cautious optimism in an industry that has been on tenterhooks as it awaits details on the fast-evolving policy. Trump signed an executive order to limit the impact of overlapping tariffs on automakers. He also released a proclamation that gives the industry a 2-year grace period to move supply chains back to the United States and reduce American reliance on imports of foreign automobiles and their parts. The American Automotive Policy Council welcomed the steps, calling tariff duplication a significant concern. It said it will review the details of the executive order closely to assess how effectively it will mitigate the impact of tariffs on American automakers, domestic supply chains, and ultimately American consumers. Trump's new policy means that a company would not face both a 25% levy for an imported vehicle and 25% on steel and aluminium. A commerce official said the importer would pay the higher of the two levies, but not both. The other change is that companies that import parts for vehicles assembled in the United States would be able to offset 3.75% of a vehicle's list price in the first year and 2.5% in the second year. The modification is designed to give companies 2 years to move supply chains to the United States. On a related note, Prime Minister Carney has pledged to confront Trump with the overwhelming positive force of a united Canada after a dramatic election win that earned the Liberal Party a minority government. Carney's Liberals fell just short of the 172 seats needed for majority control of Parliament. But with 169 confirmed wins, the party will be in a strong position to pass legislation. Following a campaign dominated by Trump's tariffs and annexation threats, Carney promised to chart a new path forward in a world fundamentally changed by the US trade war. The Prime Minister's office said Trump congratulated Carney in a call, adding they agreed to meet in person soon.
When I sit down with President Trump, it will be to discuss the future economic and security relationship between two sovereign nations. And it will be with our full knowledge that we have many other options than the United States to build prosperity for all Canadians.
Carney's election victory was an extraordinary comeback for the Liberals, who until recently looked headed for an electoral wipeout. Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister just last month, convinced voters that his experience managing economic crisis made him the ideal candidate to defy Trump. Meanwhile, France will from next year impose a handling tax for every small parcel delivered from China, sent by platforms such as Shein and Terima. The charge was announced by Public Accounts Minister Amélie de Montchalin amidst international concerns that tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump could force more Chinese goods into other markets.
Et je ne souhaite pas, nous ne souhaitons pas que les contribuables français aient à payer pour contrôler ces produits qui nous envahissent et que donc nous fassions payer aux importateurs, aux plateformes, pas aux consommateurs, mais bien aux importateurs et aux plateformes, un petit montant forfaitaire sur les colis, on parle de quelques euros, qui nous permettront ensuite, avec les services douaniers, partout en Europe, d'avoir les moyens de s'assurer que ce qui rentre sur le marché européen ne met pas en danger, je le redis, la sécurité, l'économie européenne et les finances publiques européennes. L'objectif, c'est...
The European Union is aiming to reform its customs union by 2028, and the Minister's office said France wanted the rapid establishment at the European level of a handling fee mechanism for each small package entering Europe. The Minister's office stated that the money raised through the French tax would be used to finance inspections, and the tax would be replaced when the European system starts. Meta Platforms on Tuesday announced an application programming interface in a bid to woo businesses to more easily build AI products using its Llama artificial intelligence models. Llama API, which was unveiled during the company's first ever AI developer conference, will help Meta go up against APIs offered by rival model makers including Microsoft-backed OpenAI, Alphabet's Google, and emerging low-cost alternatives such as China's DeepSeek.
The Llama API is really good at fine-tuning for your product use cases. And the best part, you have full agency over these custom models. You control them in a way that's not possible with other offerings. Whatever model you customize is yours to take wherever you want, not locked on our servers. This opens up a lot of possibilities for people that need to build and deploy custom models.
APIs allow software developers to customize and quickly integrate a piece of technology into their own products. For OpenAI, APIs constitute the firm's primary source of revenue. Meta, which released the latest version of Llama earlier this month, did not share any pricing details for the API. In a press release, it said the new API was available as a limited preview for select customers and would roll out broadly in weeks to months.
When is better?
The first 27 satellites for Amazon's Kyper broadband internet constellation will launch into space from Florida, kicking off the long-delayed deployment of an internet from space network that will rival SpaceX's Starlink. The satellites are the first of 3,236 that Amazon plans to send into low Earth orbit for Project Kyper, a $10 billion effort unveiled in 2019 to beam broadband internet globally for consumers, businesses and governments, customers that SpaceX has courted for years with its powerful Starlink business. Sitting atop an Atlas V rocket from the Boeing BAN and Lockheed Martin LMTN joint venture United Launch Alliance, the batch of 27 satellites was lofted into space from the rocket company's launch pad at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Bad weather scrubbed an initial launch attempt on 9 April. Kyper is arguably Amazon's biggest bet underway, pitting it against Starlink as well as global telecommunications providers like AT&T, TN and T-Mobile T-Mas Zero. The company has positioned the service as a boon of rural areas where connectivity is sparse or non-existent. The mission to deploy the first operational satellites has been delayed more than a year. Amazon once hoped it could launch the inaugural batch in early 2024.
And we have good indication.
Coming up, advantage PSG as Dembele seals narrow win at Arsenal. Stay tuned. We'll head to that later, but first, Homeboys has officially secured a spot in the 2025 International Esports Federation IESF World Esports Championship for PUBG Mobile, which will take place from 11 to 19 November. In a statement, the Malaysia Esports Federation, MESF, announced that Homeboys earned their place after claiming first place in the 2025 Malaysian PUBG Mobile National Qualifying Round yesterday. Arcane Ladies will represent Malaysia in the Mobile Legends Bang Bang MLBB Ladies category after defeating Torak Ladies in the finals. MESF said in its Facebook post yesterday that this wasn't just a victory but a statement that Malaysia is coming for the championship and coming for it strong. MESF also urged esports fans to rally behind the teams as they carry the Team EMAS banner onto the world stage. In football, Al-Ahly secured a 3-1 win over 10-man Al-Hilal to win the battle of the Saudi Pro League sides in Jeddah on Tuesday, booking a place in Saturday's final of the Asian Champions League Elite to keep their dream of a first continental title alive. The home side went ahead when Roger Ibanez's incisive ball from inside his own half released Galeno down the left, and the Brazilian's first-time centre was steered in by Roberto Firmino as he arrived in the 6-yard box at pace. Al-Ahly were dominating and their pressure paid off in the 27th minute, although their celebrations were briefly put on hold. Riyad Mahrez's slide rule pass released Ivan Toney behind the defence and he rolled the ball home after rounding Yassine Bounou. But while the assistant referee had raised his flag for offside, a VAR review awarded the goal to the delight of the Al-Ahly fans. With 3 minutes remaining in the half, Al-Hilal pulled one back through Salim Al-Dosari's goal despite being second best throughout the opening 45 minutes. A second yellow card for defender Khalidou Koulibaly left the 4-times champions down to 10 men for the last 30 minutes, and Al-Hilal crashed out despite late penalty saved by Bounou from Frank Kessié as Faraz Al-Brikan netted a late third. Al-Ahly have never won the Asian title, losing in the final in 1986 and 2012, and will face either compatriots Al Nassr or Japan's Kawasaki Frontale in the decider. The pair face off in the second semi-final tomorrow. Paris Saint-Germain took a big step towards reaching the Champions League final as Ousmane Dembele's early goal sealed a 1-0 win at Arsenal in a tense first leg of the semi-final early this morning. Dembele fired home off the post in the 4th minute as PSG dominated the opening stages and Luis Enrique's side held firm to beat Arsenal for the first time in 6 attempts and take a precious advantage back to the French capital. Arsenal, playing in the semi-final for the first time since 2009, improved after a torrid start and had a Mikel Merino goal ruled out after the break, while PSG keeper Gianluigi Donnarumma made several fine saves. PSG weathered the storm, though, and should have given themselves a bigger cushion for the second leg, but Bradley Barcola and Gonzalo Ramos both squandered gilt-edged chances late on as the game became stretched. Should PSG protect their advantage next Wednesday at home, they will face either Inter Milan or Barcelona in the final in Munich, and they will believe a first title in Europe's blue ribbon club competition is now finally within reach. Luis Enrique's French champions have evolved into a formidable force this year and have been tipped as favourites to lift the title that owners Qatar Sports Investments have craved since buying the club in 2011. Hansi Flick said Barcelona's victory over arch-rivals Real Madrid to win the Copa del Rey at the weekend will provide extra motivation rather than being a distraction when they face Inter Milan in the Champions League semi-final tomorrow. Flick's side, who top La Liga, completed the first part of their treble bid in a dramatic extra-time 3-2 win on Saturday, and the manager was asked if he needs to curb the players' euphoria ahead of Thursday's first leg at home to the Italians. After an enthralling 120 minutes against Real, Flick said he is waiting to see how his players react in training. He also said that Inter have less hours of recovery, but it's a Champions League semi-final, and he expected everyone to give 100%. Inter's treble bid ended last week when they exited the Coppa Italia semi-finals at the hands of AC Milan, and 2 consecutive league losses allowed Napoli to take the top spot in Serie A and open up a gap of 3 points. Flick, however, will not be changing his approach against a side who have lost 3 matches in a row. Flick did confirm that Wojciech Szczęsny will remain his first-choice keeper in the Champions League, despite the return of long-term injury absentee Marc-Andre ter Stegen. Meanwhile, Inter Milan head into the Champions League semi-finals at risk of finishing the season empty-handed after a late-season slump killed their treble hopes and has left them wondering where the next win will come from. Tomorrow's daunting clash at Barcelona could hardly have come at the worst time for Inter, who since reaching the last 4 have lost 3 games on the bounce without scoring a goal. Inter will also have 1 day less rest after having their match with Roma moved back to Sunday so that it didn't clash with Pope's Francis funeral, giving France defender Benjamin Pavard less time to recover from an ankle sprain picked up at the weekend. Simone Inzaghi will be hoping striker Marcus Thuram will be available, as his replacements have done nothing alongside Lautaro Martinez, who has looked exhausted and frustrated. Now Inter are scrambling to salvage something from what had looked like a dream season, but is rapidly turning into a nightmare. And that concludes today's edition of Bull Today. In our top story, UN wants 2-state solution nearing point of no return. Till then, I'm Brendan Lepal from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching. Take care.